This deep Discog dive was chosen by my Patreon community, thanks to all the members who voted to see this artist covered. Welcome back to a totally tubular deep Discog dive! Check it out, I'm doing a hang 10, shredding some gnarly waves, bro. Endless summer, baby! Wait, why is there a viewer discretion message? This is gonna be a fun time with surf music. Why is that there? No, guys, seriously, what are we about to talk about? Today, we're talking about the Beach Boys. Let's dive in. We're kicking things off in the fall of 1961 in Hawthorne, California. At 3701 West 119th Street lived the Wilson boys, Brian, Dennis, and Carl. Their mother, Audrey, was a talented pianist, and their father, Murray, was a machine worker who did music part-time, kind of like Joe Jackson, Michael Jackson's dad. Oh no. Murray Wilson was not a good father. He was quite abusive to his boys. I'm not going to get into the specifics of that because if I do, we're all going to be depressed, but trust me, he sucked. If there was one thing that filled the Wilson household, aside from parentally enforced sadness, it was music. Folks like Chuck Berry, the Everly Brothers, and especially for Brian, the Four Freshmen. Dennis, the only surfer in the family, told Brian that surfing was all the rage with the young folk in Southern California, but no one was singing about it. Brian took the idea to his cousin Mike Love, and they wrote a song called Surfin. There are some who say Surfin was written by Brian for a school assignment, but that's been contested by multiple folks. And I'm gonna put a disclaimer here, a lot of the band's history has been contested by folks close to the band or the bandmates themselves, but I will try my best to give the most accurate history possible. During a long weekend, while Murray and Audrey were away, the group set up instruments in the Wilson home to rehearse Surfin. The early lineup was Brian Wilson on bass, Carl Wilson on guitar, Dennis Wilson on drums, Mike Love on vocals, and their friend... Wow, I thought they would be better than that, but I guess not. I can't believe the Beach Boys used AI. Surfin was later recorded at World Pacific Studios and picked up by the label Candix. The group's original name was the Pendletones, a reference to Pendleton wool shirts associated with surfers. On November 27, 1961, the boys woke up to their first song released. They also woke up to a new band name. The name The Beach Boys was given to them without their knowledge. Candix had wanted to call the group The Surfers, but someone found out that another group already used that name and suggested The Beach Boys. Surfin reached number 75 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 3 in Los Angeles. The single's local success convinced Murray Wilson that the group should be developed professionally. Candix rewarded the Beach Boys' first success by folding in early 1962. Murray shopped the group to other labels with no luck. He wouldn't find a home for his boys until he connected with a 25-year-old Capitol A&R exec named Nick Vinay. Vinay reportedly heard 8 bars of the Beach Boys, believed they could be a hit, and even threatened to leave Capitol if they didn't bring the gang in. The Beach Boys signed a 7-year Capitol contract on July 16, 1962. Sadly, by this point, Al Jardine had left to pursue college, but the Wilsons' 13-year-old neighbor, David Marks, joined on rhythm guitar. In October 1962, the Beach Boys released Surfin Safari. Here's what I think. It was very important that the Mesopotamians invented the wheel. Without them, we wouldn't have wheels. But if you go back, you would see that their wheels were basic as hell. Surfin Safari is that wheel. This is the rawest showcase of what the Beach Boys could be, like unseasoned chicken. But while it's incredibly basic today, it's useful for us in the grand context of their history. For one thing, this album demonstrates what exactly made the Beach Boys unique. Surf music at the time was like Dick Dale, The Gamblers, heavy emphasis on the guitars. But the Beach Boys' big innovation was pairing the aesthetic of surf with the vocal harmonies of a group like the Four Freshmen. For another thing, we're already getting to see Brian take on the role of producer. While Nick Venet was officially listed as Surfin Safari's producer, Brian very much had his hands on the faders, so to speak. You want to talk individual songs? There's the band's first song, Surfin, an upbeat ditty about the surf life. I see you in everything. 409 is about hot rods, County Fair is about county fairs, Little Girl is about a dream girl, Heads You Win, Tails I Lose is literally about doing coin tosses to settle things. It's all very basic. No other Beach Boys album got to be the first one, and Surfin Safari wears that honor proudly, even if it doesn't wear it goodly. Surfin Safari, the album, did reasonably well, and its title track got to number 14 on the charts. Interestingly, Nick Venet saw the biggest order for the single come from New York, where there is no surfing or beaches. We don't believe in it. Upon seeing their first album success, specifically outside the West Coast, Capitol wanted a follow-up fast. Brian sat down at the piano with two influences in his head: Chuck Berry's Sweet Little 16 and a bunch of surf break locations from his girlfriend's brother. Those influences coalesced to bequeath us the Beach Boys' early March 1963 single, Surfin USA. Now this one feels like Brian took surfin' and just made it more, which is clear because the title is Surfin' but with extra letters. There's more energy, a faster tempo, a killer hook, and most importantly, lies. Remember, Brian was not a surfer. He had never been to the places that he was singing about, but the places in the song evoked this feeling of escape, serenity, long nights with hot girls. That feeling would later be described as the California myth. The myth that California was real. And the album, Surfin USA, followed right behind the song in late March 1963.
You'll find the beat rewarding in this neat recording so complete. All your hoarding and relax. It's something new and nifty, and if you are thrifty, we'll take $2.50 plus the tax.
Like how the lead single stepped things up from Surfin', this album takes the core sound established on Surfin Safari and just amps it up. The guitars run wild on here, able to graze and roam as any healthy guitar should do. They get to shine on the album's 5 instrumentals. In terms of production, Brian's big breakthrough as a producer here was double tracking. In layman's terms, recording a part, recording the same part again, and combining them together through studio witchcraft. In practice, this gives each part a fuller sound. Nowadays, this is a basic-ass technique. You ever see Billie Eilish recording vocals? There are hundreds of her on any given song. But back then, this was novel. Along with the excellent title track, there's also the cover of Miserlou, Shutdown, and The Longing Lonely Sea. Surfin USA across the board is a clear upgrade from the Beach Boys' debut. You probably also don't need to listen to it. I'll offer the same disclaimer that I gave with Stevie Wonder and his early albums. Albums back in the early 60s were there just to push singles. None of these early albums are Pet Sounds, and even when I say something is Pet Sounds, bam, that's actually the Snurds. The idea of an album meaning anything more would take a while. It would eventually be introduced by a certain British band that we will be talking about very soon. Surfin USA hit the real USA like a damn tidal wave. The album hit number 2 on the charts, and the single hit number 3. Plus, its success meant Brian Wilson was taken seriously by Capitol as a producer. He got to work with girl group The Honeys, and he got to co-write Jan and Dean's Surf City, which became the first surf rock song to hit number 1 on the charts. Surf music was officially a craze in the US, thanks largely, bigly, to the Beach Boys. That said, it was not all smooth surfing for the Beach Boys. You see, when Brian Wilson was writing Surfin USA, he was inspired by Chuck Berry's song Sweet Little 16. In fact, if you listen to both of the songs, you would find that Surfin USA is basically the exact same song as Sweet Little 16. Chuck Chuck's publishing company thought the same thing, and when they contacted Capitol, Murray Wilson decided to just give away the publishing rights for Surfin USA without telling Brian. For many years after that, Surfin USA was credited to Chuck Berry. After those many years, it would eventually be credited to both Chuck and Brian. Plus, way in the future, the boys would meet Chuck in Copenhagen, and Chuck told them that he loved Surfin USA. I'm sure he did, considering how much money it made him. Murray's other big move around this time was causing David Marks to leave over disagreements. David will not matter again in this story until 2012, so put that on your calendar back then today. In his place was Al Jardine returning from his studies. But the iron was still hot. Capitol wanted more music from the Beach Boys, and their follow-up arrived later in September 1963. Surfer Girl. The title track was this album's big hit, but unlike how chipper and groovy Surfin USA was, Surfer Girl is a love-torn doo-wop ballad and a sign that the Beach Boys could score hits at BPMs under 120. The other big highlight from this album is In My Room, a plaintive meditation on finding peace in one's room. Not to point out the giant "keep this song in mind as Brian's songwriting develops" sign, but this is the first indication of the different dimensions Brian would display as a songwriter. And hey, is it just me, or are there a lot of new people working on this record? Gary Usher co-writing In My Room, Roger Christian co-writing Little Deuce Coupe, Mike Love's sister playing harp on a few songs, and two dudes from a whole-ass construction crew? Damn, we're getting avant-garde in this shit already. No, sorry, unfortunately, the Wrecking Crew was actually a collection of legendary studio musicians who worked for producer extraordinaire Phil Spector. Percussionist Hal Blaine and saxophonist Steve Douglas appear on Hawaii and Our Car Club, respectively. Beyond that, I got nothing. It's more of the same from Surfin USA, and like that album before, the hits are worth checking out over a full listen. Surfer Girl was another smash hit for the Beach Boys. With two successful albums already released in 1963, Capitol let the Beach Boys chill and gave them space. Oh, another album just came out. 3 whole weeks after Surfer Girl, we got Little Deuce Coupe in October 1963. I can't help but think this one was rushed out, and that's because I know this one was rushed out. In between Surfer Girl and Lil Deuce Coupe, Capitol put out a compilation called Shutdown. It featured 2 songs from the boys, plus a bunch of other car-themed songs. That record did very well, to the point where Capitol looked at the Beach Boys and said, "Hey, make a record like that, you have 5 minutes." There's no greater metaphor for this rush job than the fact that the title track already came out. In fact, a couple other songs come from older records too. What's new then? There's Be True to Your School. SpongeBob turned into a clown. Oh. I wasn't the only one expecting that, right? It's like the same vocal intonation and rhyme scheme. There's Ballad of Old Betsy with some nice barbershop at the end. And on that same note, there's A Young Man Is Gone, an a cappella tribute to James Dean. Random as hell, but really lovely. The band's vocal arranging chops were definitely not chopped. I guess one neat historical thing about this album is that it's an early example of a concept album, since most of the songs are about cars. That's cool, but to me it carries less weight because of this album's unintentional creation. Yeah, my son saved an old lady from getting hit by a car, but he was only out because he was gonna go buy meth. Oh, also, Brian Wilson was credited as solo producer for the first time, and Hal Blaine was back on drums for one song. Yeah, that's basically it. Even with its haphazard construction, Little Deuce Coupe sold damn well. Nothing would ever happen that would threaten the Beach Boys' commercial dominance. Breaking news at this hour. Something happened that threatened the Beach Boys' commercial dominance. You see, far off in the ancient land of the UK, there was another band of boys that was getting popular. In February 1964, these boys came all the way over to the US, played the Ed Sullivan Show, and kicked off a self-titled mania. They were the Beatles. But no matter though, the US was still Beach Boy country. The gang were not about to let some Brits walk in and steal their swag. Dab. 3 weeks after the Beatles played Ed Sullivan, the Beach Boys released Shutdown Volume 2. Before you ask, they didn't choose the name. This was of course named as the successor to the Shutdown compilation, which may lead someone to think this was also a Rush job. It's me, I'll self-report. I'm someone. There are fun songs to be found, though, like Fun Fun Fun. That song is legally required to be fun, and thankfully it is. There's also Why Do Fools Fall in Love, which is really nice and big sounding. This was the first instance where I could hear the influence Phil Spector had on Brian Wilson musically. Phil also influenced the making of this album's other big hit. Don't Worry Baby was written by Brian as a direct response to the Ronettes' Be My Baby. He even offered it to Phil, but he passed because he had a policy of not recording songs he didn't write. Ah well, more good songs for the Beach Boys. I'm a sucker for any song that does a key change between the verse and the chorus. It's probably the Shania Twain fan in me. Speaking of Phil, more members of the Wrecking Crew pop up on this album. Hal Blaine, Ray Pullman, Leon Russell, Frank Capp, and several other crewmates play on one or more songs. Wait, what's this song? Cassius Love versus Sonny Wilson?
Yeah, like in Surfin Safari. Let's go surfing now.
Oh wait, this is just snippets of previous songs with the boys talking in between. Is this a clip show in music form? If you don't know, a clip show is a TV episode that's comprised of clips from past episodes. It'd be like if you were watching one of my videos and all of a sudden I was like, time to talk about your feelings. Well, yes, I did get a haircut. I didn't even know you could do that on an album. At least Shutdown Volume 2 has that going for it. Fun 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 and Don't Worry Baby both performed well on the charts. Triple F even peaked at number 5. At a time when the Beatles held 3 of the top 5 spots. But hey, a win is a win. All of the Beach Boys were rattled in some way by the Beatles' meteoric rise, but Brian specifically saw them as a creative challenge. And that energy carried into the making of their next album. Recording went from April to May 1964, with the Beach Boys recording most parts and the Wrecking Crew helping to oxymoronically build songs up. During the recording for this next album, Brian and Murray Wilson got into a fight about the lead single. Murray was physically shoved out of the studio by Brian and was fired as the band's manager the same day. Not that he had a lot of creative input at this point. The boys actually set up a dummy mixing board for him to use so he could feel like he was helping. Murray's time as an official contributor to the Beach Boys ended that day, though don't worry, baby, his shadow will still loom large. In July 1964, the Beach Boys released their 6th album in 2 years, all summer long. Let's talk that lead single, I Get Around. This was the first song recorded after Beatlemania started, which means it shows the boys out to prove their mettle in pop music. And I think they do it well. That killer falsetto from Brian on the chorus, great singing on the verses by Mike, and lyrics about how the Beach Boys were just such bad bitches. I once sang this song in an all-boys choir in high school, and we would change the word around to aroused. I'll give you a second to process that hilarious jest, that witty farce. It was also the song that led to the aforementioned incident with Murray, which is kind of wild. Like, this objectively good song and hit single inspired an altercation? Brian was really starting to go wild with production here. Piccolo and xylophone on the title track, guitar amp feedback on Little Honda, Hammond organ on We'll Run Away, and the songwriting was not slouching by any means, like on the gorgeous Hushabye and Girls on the Beach with its multiple key changes in a row. This might be the first truly good Beach Boys album. Check out the songs I've called out at the very least, but for real, I think the whole thing deserves a full listen. All Summer Long was a smash hit for the gang, even considering their prior success. It was the first Beach Boys album to go gold, I Get Around was the band's first #1 hit, and hey, Paul McCartney and John Lennon from the Beatles reportedly loved it. So what would inspire the next Beach Boys album after this huge win? Competition. Around this time, Capitol asked for a Christmas album from the boys. Brian was very inspired by Phil Spector's classic 1963 Christmas album, an album he actually attended sessions for. He played piano on one song, but Phil dismissed him for unsatisfactory playing. Naturally, when Brian had a chance to get back at Phil, he brought out the big guns for it. He even hired an arranger for the four freshmen. This album was recorded a month after All Summer Long. At this pace, the boys will have put out 3 studio albums and a live album in just 1 year. What a cool and normal work pace that will have no ramifications at any point. In November 1964, we got the Beach Boys' Christmas album. I was expecting a cash grab at first, or at least a money tickle, but honestly, I'm really into this album. The album's most recognizable song is Little Saint Nick. It's recognizable because it's good. The Beach Boys' cheery demeanor made it easy for them to make holiday music. Take away the lyrics and the sleigh bells, and this could have been on any past album from a songwriting perspective. Productionally, is that a word? That's a different story. Brian was continuing his upward trajectory as producing savant, and his lush production rears its handsome head on songs like Frosty the Snowman and Blue Christmas. Christmas Day was the first song to have Al Jardine on lead vocals, and to me he sounds like Bob Welsh from Fleetwood Mac. And Auld Lang Syne has Dennis speaking to the audience and thanking us for listening. Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Not only is this an excellent album for your next holiday party, but I'd even recommend it during non-Christmas hours. Play it on Halloween, play it on Memorial Day, play it on La Guiane. The Beach Boys' Christmas album also went gold and is considered a classic holiday album. Another win for the boys. I wish I could say this incredible period for the Beach Boys continued, but whatever this period could have been, sadly ended in December 1964. During a flight from LA to Houston, Brian Wilson suffered a terrible mental breakdown. He was able to play the show in Houston, but did not play for the rest of the tour. Glenn Campbell stepped in to replace him. But that's not the end. In January 1965, Brian told the Beach Boys that he was done with touring. He said the group could have a wonderful future together as long as they did their job and he did his. From then on, Brian's work with the band was limited to songwriting and recording. No touring. This marks an official split in what the Beach Boys were. A split that will have long-lasting effects for basically the rest of their career. To replace Brian on the road, the boys brought in Bruce Johnston. After the rest of the boys accepted his terms, Brian immediately got to work on a new album. Brian went into the studio in January 1965 with 25 members of the Wrecking Crew, and they brought in loads of new instruments: timpani, harpsichord, vibraphone, French horn, English horn, accordion, tenor sax, bari sax. The only thing in short supply was recorded parts from the actual Beach Boys, though they did contribute, of course. In March 1965, we received the Beach Boys Today. Also, if you're wondering why Brian is on screen despite swearing off touring, he did still appear for some TV performances, at least for now. So what is it like when Brian does his job? Really damn good. While this isn't a concept album per se, it does have a concept behind it, or at least a structure. The first half is full of the traditionally upbeat pop music the boys were known for. The album opens with Do You Wanna Dance, a Bobby Freeman cover with Dennis on lead vocals. It is massive in its sound, especially when the first chorus hits. Even considering how Brian had developed as a producer up to this point, this is a big step up from the past few albums. Dance 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 is a bluesy rip-roarer with Carl Wilson as a co-writer for the first time. Even with the typical sound, the gang find time to weave in more thoughtful subject matter. When I Grow Up to Be a Man has the boys wondering how their lives will be different when they become proper adults. Keep in mind, these guys were all in their early 20s at this point. Help Me Rhonda is about a man trying to get with a one-night stand after his wife leaves him. This is a good version of this song, but there is another version that will matter far more, and I'll bring it up when it happens. But don't think this album is all smiles. The second half hits you with more somber, introspective songs. In the Back of My Mind depicts someone with a perfect life who suspects things will soon turn sour. Another song with Dennis on lead vocals, and man, I'm really loving his voice. Please Let Me Wonder has Brian choosing to fantasize about a girl he likes instead of confirming if her feelings are mutual. I'm really starting to appreciate the little one-off details Brian as a producer throws into these songs. A vibraphone that plays twice, or an electric guitar that shows up once and then bows out. It gives the feeling of Brian's production being a space where friends and characters come and go on a whim. It can be a very welcoming environment. This was also the first song Brian wrote while under the influence of the marijuana. Considering the band was all fun cars, girls, surf just 3 years prior, this second half is a remarkable step up in musical maturity. Man, the Beach Boys were 3 for 3 now with great albums. While it's truly unfortunate the circumstances that led Brian into the studio, I can't complain with the work being done. Beach Boys Today was a critical and commercial success and showed the boys had lasting appeal for today and tomorrow and the rest of the days. Capitol was continuing to call them a surf band, but Brian was already thinking of the Beach Boys beyond the confines of the ocean. So much for thoughts though, Capitol still wanted hits pronto. By this point, the boys, by which I really mean Brian, were pumping out about 60 songs a year. This was an insane stress to put on any musician, let alone one who wasn't even a year removed from a traumatizing breakdown. But the boys still got to work in the spring of 1965, with the Wrecking Crew once again joining the fun. In July 1965, the Beach Boys gave us Summer Days and Summer Nights. Despite the range of times the title covers, this is not as ambitious a project as Beach Boys Today. In fact, I'll say it outright, this is a step back for the band. You can hear it right on Amusement Parks USA, which is just about amusement parks in the USA. Salt Lake City is about Salt Lake City. Yay. Okay, it's not all bad. Help Me Rhonda is back from the last album, but this time it's sporting a new coat of production. It was great back then, and it's still great now. And Brian still gets to flex his experimental pinky toe on some songs. California Girls was reportedly inspired by Brian's first time on LSD, as well as cowboy movie scores. The opening orchestral section is drop-dead gorgeous. Brian later said it was the greatest piece of music he had ever written. Let 'Em Run Wild is also more experimental. It was even the song where Carl, Dennis, and Al all realized Brian had the chops, the sauce, the motion, the chimichangas as a songwriter and producer. Summer Days and Summer Nights is a mix of the bigger production of the past few albums with the simpler subject matter of the early albums. I can't call the whole thing a classic, but the songs that are good are great. Summer Days and Summer Nights sold damn well, and Help Me Rhonda 2.0 became the band's second #1 hit. Did that appease Capitol's voracious appetite? Hell no. They wanted another album for the holiday. Brian was already pondering his orb over a new album, but the approaching deadline meant the gang had to switch focus for a bit and pump out a quickie to satiate Capitol. This next feast of an album was November 1965's Beach Boys Party, which to me was more like a Beach Boys Party, but the exclamation point is a little bit shorter, so you say it like, Beach Boys Party. You know, even considering this one was made just to make a record label smile, it's a fun time. Granted, there's not a single original song on here. In fact, the only Beach Boys song here is a medley of previous songs. But this does give us a chance to hear what the gang sound like singing the Beatles, or the Everly Brothers, or the...
Will you guys shut the f*** up back there?
Yeah, so this is kind of the gimmick of this album. The Beach Boys recorded a normal album and then had friends and family come in to overdub party noises. Is it annoying if you just want to listen to the boys? A little, but the crowd noise does give the album a unique energy. What also helps is the more casual production. There are no electric instruments or strings anywhere on here. So this really does feel like a fun time hangout with the boys and their pals. Dennis sounds great singing You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, Brian and Mike get a lovely duet with Devoted to You, and Al gives The Times They Are a-Changin' the old Jardine Supreme. Talking about this album is funny, everything about it that I would criticize is an intrinsic part of it. So I feel like my hands are tied. The album knows what it is. It would be like criticizing the Mario Galaxy movie for a threadbare plot. It's like, what'd you expect from the funny Wahoo Plumber movie? The same month as Party, the boys put out the non-album single, The Little Girl I Once Knew. It used full bars of silence at multiple points, so radio programmers were like, "F you very much," and didn't play it. They decided to play the last song on Party, a Regents cover called Barbara Ann. This song became a #2 hit in early 1966. Brian was not a fan of this, and to be honest, I'm not either. It's one of the few Beach Boys songs where I find their singing to be too shrill. We are now 10 albums into the Beach Boys catalog and 3 years into their existence. I'd like to take stock of this moment and see where the Beach Boys as an entity were. For one thing, they were lucrative. Multiple top 10 hits, multiple top 10 albums. As hitmakers for Capitol and the leaders of the surf rock craze, they were still standing tall. Hell, even with the British invasion continuing to challenge them, the boys held their own, certainly more than other acts around this time. And part of that had to do with Brian, as songwriter and producer for the group, pushing their material forward in new and subtle ways, retaining the flavor that people came to expect, but throwing in some unexpected seasoning. That said, if you were to ask someone at the time if they could hear the nuanced production decisions on a song like Do You Wanna Dance compared to Surfin USA, they'd spray mace in your face and debase your case. The boys covering The Times They Are A-Changing feels like the ultimate metaphor for where they were at this point, still marketed as a happy-go-lucky surfing band with friends and family yelling over them as they sing one of the definitive protest songs of the era from someone who was considered a real musician. And that's the thing. The Beach Boys may have still been holding their own on the charts, but for all the praise you could give them, there's one thing you could not under any reasonable circumstance call them, and that is cool. Other artists of the time, the Stones, the Byrds, the Bob, came off as cool in a way that the Beach Boys hadn't ever really tried to be. But the times were about to change very hard for the Beach Boys. In December 1965, Brian Wilson heard the Beatles album Rubber Soul, and it changed everything for him. What's especially wild is that Brian was listening to the US version of Rubber Soul. Beatles albums for the first half of their career had different track lists on the US version compared to the rest of the world. So Brian was listening to a version of Rubber Soul that didn't have Drive My Car or Nowhere Man. Had Brian heard the canonical version of Rubber Soul, he would have created a black hole on the spot. The same month he heard Rubber Soul, Brian contacted Tony Asher. He was an ad copywriter and a jingle writer whom Brian had met during a recording session. Right away, the two got to work. Brian at the piano, banging out chords and general emotions for songs, and Tony serving as the lyrical translator for those emotions. The two then set up shop across 4 Hollywood studios in early 1966 with the Wrecking Crew as session musicians. To say Brian went hog wild in the studio this time would be a mockery of hogs. The total budget for this album was nearly $700,000 when adjusted for inflation. But this was his baby, the baby to end all babies. He even oversaw the album's mix, specifically in mono. I haven't mentioned this yet, but for often debated reasons, Brian was basically deaf in one ear. So even in a world transitioning to stereo recordings, he made sure this album was in mono. Dude, bro, I knew I liked you, bring it in. If you're curious, the rest of the Beach Boys were out touring Japan and Hawaii at this time, and they came home to find basically a completed album. Carl and Dennis were both pretty into what Brian was laying down. Mike, however, had concerns, primarily with how different it felt compared to the band's past work and whether it fit with their brand. This is really where the legend of Mike Love began to take shape, who he was thought of as a member of the Beach Boys and how he was, and still is, considered a oppositional force to Brian. A famous line credited to him is, "Don't f stuck with the formula. Now, granted, Mike has repeatedly said that he never said that, and Brian as well has said that Mike never said that to him. But we will see Mike say other things and perform actions that would make you believe that he said that line. And in fairness too, Mike wasn't the only one with concerns about the album. Murray Wilson, still a presence in the boy's life, and Capitol were both skeptical of Brian's new material. But did he prove them wrong? In May 1966, the Beach Boys released Pet Sounds. Oh, hold up guys, there's a fly on the timpani. Never mind, you got it. Now, I just told a really funny joke, and it was that the Beach Boys released this album. No. This is effectively a Brian Wilson solo album, co-written by Tony Asher, performed by the Wrecking Crew, with the Beach Boys, the band on the cover, you might know them, doing vocals. If this was the only major shakeup to the band's style, that might not be such a big deal. What sets this album apart, and what likely set off Mike Love's alarm, is the album's themes, lyrics, and feel. Remember that second half of Beach Boys Today that was melancholic and slow? We just got its sequel. No songs about surfing, cars, or California, and the songs about girls aren't really songs about girls, they're songs about how girls made Brian feel. This is Brian Wilson in full-on contemplative, introspective mode. If I was a person who sucked and was bad, I'd say this was like a proto-incel album before throwing myself off the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, can I please stop not talking about Wouldn't It Be Nice? I've been waiting all this time. Let me have something nice for once. Banger, classic, goated, peak. It depicts a couple talking about how great their life will be once they're married. I get chills every time I hear that final stack of harmonies. We also need to stop disrespecting God Only Knows this exact second, because I know you were doing it, Jebediah. Come on, Carl, start off this love song strong.
I may not always love you.
Okay, cool, nice attempt. For real though, holy shit. This is a perfect synopsis for the album and what Brian was trying to do. His songwriting was more driven by the capturing of pure emotion and less driven by silly concepts like music theory or harmonic convention or even human law. This bizarre chromatic step up before the first verse is in the same song as this gorgeous rising melodic pattern before the title drop.
I'll make you so sure about it.
A lot of music writing these days is like, this four-piece Brooklyn art pop rock band duo makes music that takes you on a journey. But this right here is a journey. This is the ultimate endgame of harmonic dissonance and consonance. Brian taking you through all these weird chords, but eventually sticking the landing, making sense of it all. The rest of Pet Sounds can really take its sweet time unfurling itself to you. You Still Believe in Me takes solace in a partner recognizing someone's best attempts despite their mistakes. Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder lumbers forward with organ, strings, and distant piano, almost like a funeral dirge, except it's about caring for someone without needing to speak. Sloop John B is a cover of a Bahamian folk song, though the wildest thing about this song is that Al Jardine was the one pushing Brian to make this happen. For the longest time, I thought this was a song Brian had always wanted to do. I Know There's an Answer pushes back against the LSD culture of the time, a drug Brian had been experimenting with. I Just Wasn't Made for These Times mixes lyrics about social isolation with the clopping of tempo blocks, the drone of harpsichords, and one of the first instances of theremin in pop music. It also soundtracked one of my favorite scenes from Mad Men, so I have a soft spot for this one. The title track is this Latin rhythm instrumental with a drummer playing two Coke cans. It was initially written to be in a James Bond film. Still waiting. Unfortunately, it has no actual Pet Sounds on it. For those, you would have to check out Caroline No, a tender album closer where Brian grapples with the loss of innocence and an ex moving on. This has Pet Sounds and Trains on it. And you're saying to me, Mike, stop, you're talking about this album too much, but I can't stop, and that's because this album does not actually end. The production of this album is the good kind of never-ending abyss. The more you stare into it, the more you find, and yet the less you think you know. This is a sick and twisted labyrinth of pop music production combined with some of its most singular and beautiful songwriting. Pet Sounds is a classic album. I want to make sure you hear me when I say that, and in fact, I'm going to say it again. Pet Sounds is a classic album. I'm making that clear because it also kind of doomed the Beach Boys. Okay, let's qualify that. Pet Sounds sold fine enough. It peaked at number 10, and a few of the songs became top 10 hits. Plus, the folks who got Pet Sounds got Pet Sounds. In a nice bit of gentlemanly sportsmanship, Paul McCartney not only loved the album, but said it was the benchmark the Beatles used when they made one of their upcoming albums. I wonder how that'll go. That said, Pet Sounds was kinda considered a flop compared to the band's past albums. That might surprise you, considering this album has a legendary stature, but now's probably the best time to tell you. The public wasn't super hot on Pet Sounds when it came out. Reception at the time ranged from mixed to tepidly positive. Some fans even warned others to stay away from the weird new Beach Boys album. The overall response was something like, "All right, yeah, okay, good for you." This muted reception to Pet Sounds really messed with Brian, who had put his all into this album. Why didn't it land? There are two reasons that most people bring up. One, Pet Sounds is an album. Shocking, I know. What I mean is, Pet Sounds was conceived as an album at a time when the music world was still super focused on singles. Yeah, I know Pet Sounds did literally have hits, but they all take a second to get. Past Beach Boy singles may have been simpler and thus, in some folks' minds, worse, but they all clicked way more immediately. The second thing working against Pet Sounds was Capitol. They were still positioning the boys as a happy, sunny, surfing gang of lads. To have that image in your mind and then listen to Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder would kill a man of lacking faith. As soon as their fears about Pet Sounds were confirmed, they pivoted to putting together a best-of compilation and spent all of their efforts promoting that. In a last-ditch attempt to salvage its performance, the band hired the Beatles' old publicist, Derek Taylor. Derek got to work pushing Pet Sounds ahead of its UK release, positioning Brian Wilson as a genius, updating the band's attire, so on and so forth. As a result of Derek's work, the UK public got Pet Sounds immediately. It ended up being one of the best-selling albums of 1966 over there. I hope the irony is not lost on you, the quintessential American band seeing way more success in the UK. Despite the hit Brian took, it's not like he completely shut down. He was certainly affected mentally, which was not helped by his growing fondness of drugs, but he still wanted to prove this new era of the Beach Boys to the world. So Brian decided to take a song originally intended for Pet Sounds and turn it into a pocket symphony, a sort of one-pager pitch in song form. While the original lyrics from Tony Asher didn't click for Brian, it was Mike Love's suggestion for a chorus that made Brian really lock in. I'm picking up good vibrations, she's giving me excitations. Which for the longest time I thought was a made-up word, but turns out it's real. This new song was recorded between February and September 1966 across at least 5 different studios. Its making was arduous, not only for its scale and not only for its reported $450,000 budget when adjusted for inflation, but for Brian fighting back against the label and other forces that were worried about a Pet Sounds repeat. In October 1966, the Beach Boys released the single Good Vibrations. First off, let me make clear, I respect Good Vibrations. Like a feral bear in the cold, snowy forest, I respect it. Any song that aims to be a pocket symphony and spend ungodly amounts of money in the studio to accomplish it, I simply must stand on a conceptual level. But I sadly can't stand on a practical level. I like Good Vibrations in parts. Let's approach it like a compliment sandwich. Good part, the staccato cello. Less good part, Carl's vocals on the verses feeling too airy and kinda unnerving for me. Good part, the mounting harmonies after the second chorus. Less good part, the whole song immediately slowing down to just shaker-in vocals. Good part, Mike hitting the low notes on the chorus. Less good part, the do-do-do-do-do's that halt the whole thing before the outro. It all just feels so start and stop to me, almost as if it was recorded in modular pieces. What? That's exactly how it was recorded? Good Vibrations was the first instance of Brian's modular process, recording different sections of the song in different studios. The sections were then stitched together through tape splicing with reverb decays masking the cuts. If nothing else, this song is a landmark in studio recording. And hey, aside from my own personal taste, Good Vibrations is more than nothing. It's a tremendous song, a testament to Brian Wilson's skill in the studio, and unlike the album before it, it was an instant smash. It debuted on the Hot 100 in October, and it became the Beach Boys' third #1 hit in December. Good Vibrations is a classic song. I want you to hear me when I say that, and in fact, I'm gonna say it again. Good Vibrations is a classic song. I'm making that clear because it also kinda doomed the Beach Boys. Good Vibrations was proof to Brian Wilson that the Beach Boys could be seen by the general public as more than just America's premier surf rock band. At a dinner party in October 1966, wait, why is bro eating a shoe? Brian announced his next project. In his own words, a teenage symphony to God. Instead of Tony Asher, Brian's main collaborator this time was Van Dyke Parks, a Mississippi-born former child actor and classically trained songwriter. Over the next few minutes, I will describe to you a period that lasted between October 1966 and May 1967. At multiple points during this description, I may sound insane to you, but I hope you follow me to the best of your ability. We are now going to talk about Smile. Smile was the name of this new Beach Boys album, the Teenage Symphony to God. Recording started in earnest after Good Vibrations released. Smile was recorded using the same modular process as before, with Brian recording each song in pieces across multiple studios. In December, Capitol started promoting Smile, especially in the UK, not only based on Pet Sounds' success there, but also the worldwide success of Good Vibrations. This was gonna be great! The Beach Boys and Brian Wilson claiming their spot as the world's #1 band, not only in terms of sales, but in terms of creative expression, pushing the medium of pop music forward in new ways. And it was all thanks to Smile, released in... Smile never officially came out. Why, you might be asking, when it had everything going for it? The answer is often attributed to 3 forces. First, Brian Wilson's worsening mental health. At this time, Brian suffered from undiagnosed schizoaffective disorder. This condition, along with his reputation as a perfectionist and his continued drug use, led Brian to become difficult in the studio. The session musicians were caught between waiting around for Brian to work out what he wanted them to play and drilling repeated takes until the early morning. It also led to some eccentric behavior from Brian. He installed a sandbox under his grand piano. He built a hotboxing tent in his dining room. At one point, Murray Wilson started surveilling Brian after learning that he had done LSD, which led Brian to surveil Murray back. Father-son surveillance, you've gotta love it. At another point, Brian saw a movie called Seconds and thought that Phil Spector was secretly taunting him through covert messages in the movie. The most famous story from this time comes from a session in November 1966. Brian had session musicians wear plastic fireman's helmets and even lit a small fire in a trash bin so that the room would smell like smoke. Then later on, he learned that another building had burned down around the same time they were recording, and that led Brian to think that he had awoken some dark magic, and he locked the tapes away. The second force was the rest of the band. To be honest, the Smile sessions went pretty smoothly at the start. It was when the band returned from touring when things started going downhill. The boys' big objection wasn't the music. They all thought it was good, if once again a step away from their established sound. Their objection was the lyrics. Van Dyke Parks was notable as a creative in 2 ways. His lyrics were really abstract, and he didn't like to explain himself. In one famous instance, Mike Love demanded Van Dyke explain what the lyric over and over, the Crow cries, "Uncover the cornfield," meant. Van Dyke left the project sometime in early 1967 after inking his own deal with Warner Brothers. The third force was kind of ironic, considering they had kickstarted Brian's musical growth in the mid-60s. In early 1967, Brian heard the Beatles song "Strawberry Fields Forever" for the first time. And it changed everything for him. If Brian's relationship with the Beatles was a Cold War of 1960s pop music, "Strawberry Fields Forever" was the Beatles landing on the moon first. It was the sign that they had beaten Brian to whatever he planned to do with Smile. And when Brian later heard the Beatles' May 1967 album, the one that was inspired by Pet Sounds, game over. That same month, even with multiple full songs recorded, parts laid down for dozens more, and over 80 recording sessions completed, Smile was canceled. This would have lasting repercussions on both the Beach Boys as a group and Brian Wilson specifically for many years to come. But in the interim, there was a bit of a pressing matter to attend to. If Smile was kaput, what were the boys gonna release instead? Yeah, so Capitol was low-key breathing down the Beach Boys' collective neck for a new album. They had spent time marketing Smile, they delayed it when Brian asked, but to now have nothing to show for it? That would not do. Thankfully, the Beach Boys knew how to handle things calmly. Their first move was suing Capitol to get unpaid royalties and terminate their contract. This did not work. The parties settled in July 1967, but the Beach Boys were able to start their own imprint through Capitol, Brother Records. A fresh new album was recorded over 6 weeks in the summer of 1967, and the public got it in September. Smiley Smile. Okay, look at that. We did get a smile, and a smiley one at that. I'm really trying my best, you guys. Where do the Beach Boys go after Pet Sounds and Smile? Multiple directions all at once. On one hand, the studio grandeur of Pet Sounds and Smile is basically gone. The band is back to performing most of the parts themselves, with virtually no session musicians around. On the other hand, though, the quirked up qualities of Pet Sounds and Smile were still present. Lead single Heroes and Villains. Much like Good Vibrations, I like parts of it. The opening jaunt of a verse, great. The a cappella breakdown, followed by the gorgeous, slower rendition of the verse, amazing. The couple of times where a slide whistle is all like, funny. The slow droning chorus with the heroes and villains, no thank you. Shout out to Fantastic Mr. Fox though. The song's used very well in that movie. Once again, it's too start and stop for me to like holistically. But boy, if you like Heroes and Villains, get ready for a bunch of weird shit. Fall Breaks and Back to Winter has this ominous tone counterbalanced with goofy melodica. She's Going Bald breaks down with strange pitch-shifted sha-na-nas and then immediately cuts to lo-fi vaudeville. Vegetables. My favorite vegetable. Vegetables is just bass guitar and the group singing about literal vegetables. Hey, at least Good Vibrations is on it. Apparently Brian didn't want to include it, but he was, for the first time, outvoted on the decision by his bandmates. I'm gonna be real, the whole album feels like a troll. The Beach Boys at their loosest and strangest so far. I suppose that's interesting, and of course the album is fascinating as the smoldering embers of the Smile sessions. I just don't have much reason, personally, to go back to it. Who's ready to get sad? Smiley Smile was the band's worst performing album to date. Rough reviews, rough sales, a modest hit with Heroes and Villains, but after the public had spent so much time waiting for the real Smile, getting this imposter did not go over well. The boys tried to salvage things by going to Honolulu and recording a live album. You can tell this live album did great because it never officially came out. Speaking of live performances, the boys were supposed to play the Monterey Pop Festival in June 1967. This festival was famous for introducing to the US The Who, Janis Joplin, Otis Redding. It's largely seen as a beginning point for the Summer of Love and the overall hippie movement. The boys, however, canceled their appearance just one day before the festival. Why they did this was up for debate. Carl was having issues over getting drafted into the military. The band was busy cleaning up the fallout from Smile. Brian was scared that the boys would be seen as too square. Whatever the reason was, their cancellation left a bad taste in the music press's mouth, and that bad taste would come back to bite them in the ass. But hey, I mean, at least Murray put out his debut album in October 1967. Isn't that great? This string of failures made the Beach Boys realize they were in need of a course correction, and they corrected their course quickly, or at least attempted to. A new album was recorded in a matter of weeks in the fall and released just months after Smiley Smile in December 1967. Wild Honey. Let me first remind you of something I said earlier. The Beach Boys were uncool. The only thing that had changed between Pet Sounds and this point was how much their uncoolness grew. The band had a reputation for squeaky clean songs with Mickey Mouse-ass vocals, so in an effort to combat that reputation, we've got ourselves a rhythm and blues album, one that was very inspired by Stevie Wonder. Kind of funny, since a few years prior to this, Stevie made an album that was very inspired by the Beach Boys. In tandem with the genre switch-up, the boys don't really do much group singing at all. Brian also takes a backseat with production this time, with Carl stepping in a bit more. The one thing that does carry over from Smiley Smile is the group playing their own parts. The Beach Boys weren't gonna be boys anymore. They would be the Beach Men. And man, men, this album's a good time. I enjoyed I'd Love Just Once to See You, How She Boogalooed It, Country Air, Mama Says, which remakes Vegetables in a way that I like more, A Thing or Two. What did he just say? Oh, Little Girl. Did anyone else hear what I heard there? My guy, you needed to separate those words way more. You needed to pull a duck hunt. Here Comes the Night is this funky tune with weird-ass chords in the chorus. That's C minor, A flat 7, and F major. Okay guys, we'll talk with your parents more after class. By the way, the Stevie Wonder influence wasn't just a name drop. The title track was written by Mike Love from the perspective of Stevie Wonder. I wonder what that would look like. And oh, what's this? I Was Made to Love Her, a Stevland Wonder cover. You know, Wild Honey ain't half bad. I'd say it's half good, perhaps even 4/5 good. I'm reminded of the first album they did after Brian quit touring. The circumstances the band were in sucked, but at least they were finding ways to still make good music. Wild Honey didn't get bad reviews. In fact, to some it was a step up from Smiley Smile. But in comparison to the eternally hyped Smile, it felt like a weak retread of the R&B that the Beatles and the Rolling Stones already did. In later years, though, the album would be far more praised as an early example of lo-fi pop. This album kicked off a phase where Beach Boys albums were good, but released at the worst possible times. On its own, Wild Honey is good, but at a time when we were getting maximalist albums like Magical Mystery Tour and Their Satanic Majesty's Request, Wild Honey stuck out like a sore thumb. Luckily, the Beach Boys found new inspiration the same month Wild Honey dropped. While at a gala in Paris, the gang met Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He was the creator of Transcendental Meditation and the spiritual advisor for bands like the Beatles. By January 1968, Mike, Al, Carl, and Brian were all heavy meditators. Mike especially took to the Maharishi's lessons. He even went out to Rishikesh in February 1968 to study with the Maharishi, along with the Beatles, Donovan, and Mia and Prudence Farrow. This was the same trip that would inspire much of the Beatles' White Album. This is also where, according to Mike Love, he told Paul McCartney to make the bridge in Back in the USSR about the girls overseas. Sessions for the boys' next album went went until April 1968, the same month as their self-financed $1 million tour throughout the American South. Their first show was on April 5th, a day after MLK Jr. was assassinated. The tour was canceled on April 12th. Okay, so the Beach Boys lost all of their money with that tour, but that's nothing another tour couldn't solve. Mike Love had the idea to do a joint tour with the Maharishi, which started in May. And no major political figures were assassinated during this time, so the tour must have gone great, right? Nope, it got canceled after 5 shows because basically no one showed up. At a show in Queens, they were in a venue that could house 16,000 people, but they had to cancel because they only brought in 800. 2 tours down the toilet now, but hey, maybe the Beach Boys could reverse their fortune with a new album. Friends, in June 1968. Some consider this to be the final album of the band's lo-fi trilogy. Some consider this Brian's second unofficial solo album. I consider it all right. In a slight step away from the R&B of Wild Honey, Friends is more psychedelic pop, a teensy step back towards the orchestration of Pet Sounds and Smile. Can the band bring back Wrecking Crew players without causing fires through dark magic? The title track combines classic group singing with jazzy chord changes. Wake the World mixes a breezy vibe, a tuba counter melody, and a very random fade out. Be Here in the Morning sounds like they somehow went forward in time, got Stu from King Gizzard when they were recording Fishing for Fishies and had him guest on their song. Also, Murray Wilson is on here doing the bass harmony part. I think this is the only Beach Boys song he appears on. Little Bird is one of Dennis's first writing credits, and I really like the groovy undercurrent he brings to the band's sound. Busy Doing Nothing is the band giving driving directions to Brian's house over bossa nova. Is this the first ever self-inflicted doxing in a song? The TM influence even shows up on Anna Lee the Healer. However, I do have to make special mention for Transcendental Meditation, a song directly about TM and how cool it is. This is corny as hell. Do not let Mike Love write songs about TM, guys. I won't say this album inspires strong feelings in me, but maybe this one wasn't supposed to. It's a casual, laid-back trip through sun-soaked plains. Just try to tune out Mike when he brings up TM. Friends got okay reviews at the time. Still, it wasn't enough to revitalize the band commercially. It became the band's worst-selling album so far, beating Smiley Smile. The music that was getting popular at the time was just so different from the cheery energy of Friends. A compilation released in August 1968 didn't fare much better either. The band were really at a low point here, as was Brian specifically. Following a disastrous recording session in the summer, he started expressing suicidal intent to colleagues. Soon after, he was admitted into a psychiatric hospital. As far as their next album was concerned, he was not going to be involved much. Speaking of a new album, the Beach Boys owed Capitol one more album to fulfill their contract. In order to get literally anything out, Carl went back through the band's old material and managed to cobble something together. At least Dennis was doing okay around this time. During the summer of 1968, he befriended a man named Charles, and he invited Charles and his family to come and stay at his house. What a good Samaritan he was. In February 1969, the boys released 2020, named so because this was their 20th album if you count compilations and live albums. Everything I just said may lead you to think this is just a stopgap of an album. It is, but it's important for the band's trajectory for one reason. With Brian pretty much unavailable, Carl and Dennis stepped in as lead producers. Do It Again is a nice bluesy opener that is sadly not a cover of Steely Dan, which wouldn't be possible because that song came out later, but please do not bring my dreams down. I am loved, people love me. I Can Hear Music is a minor return to Brian's obsession with Phil Spector as the band covers the Ronettes. Carl killed it on the lead vocal, just like Spector killed Lana Clarkson. You thought I wasn't gonna bring up the fact that Spector's an actual murderer? Dennis also brings his A-game on Be With Me, with not only his tender vocal performance, but the opulent production around him. Mike Love even gets to shine on the rockabilly banger All All I Wanna Do. The outro is What? Never Learn Not to Love was reworked from a song called Cease to Exist, originally written by Dennis's friend Charles. He wasn't credited though. In exchange for the song, Dennis got him a bunch of stuff, including a motorcycle. Charles wasn't super happy about them changing his lyrics though. At one point, he gave Dennis a bullet and said, "Every time you look at this, I want you to think how nice it is that your kids are still safe." That's kind of weird. The most noteworthy songs, though, are right at the end. Our Prayer and Cabinescence both come from Smile. And I don't mean they were re-recorded, though they did get some new overdubs. These songs are from the original Smile sessions. This kicks off a wee little trend where songs from Smile pop up on other albums, giving us a taste of what could have been. Our Prayer is just 65 seconds of gorgeous harmonies, and Cabinescence is a rock and roll waltz in Brian's own words, with accordion, percussion mimicking rail spikes, and the closest the boys ever got to demonic chanting. It also has the crow cries uncover the cornfield line I mentioned earlier. 2020 can't escape its slapdash nature as an album made to fulfill a contract, but it's not without good songs, and it's a taste of what Carl and Dennis can do when given the wheel. 2020, like Friends before it, got lukewarm reviews and middling sales in the US. However, in the UK, it was a hit, as were Do It Again and I Can Hear Music. America's band was making waves in Britain again. Nothing could sour this small but meaningful turnaround for the Beach Boys. Hey, whatever happened to Dennis's friend Charles? Murders 5 people in LA. Sharon Tate. What was Charles's last name? Yeah, Dennis befriended the Charles Manson. He brought Charles and his family into his house. The cult members did drugs and had orgies there, and Dennis even paid for penicillin shots when gonorrhea was getting spread among them. That's real. That's a confirmed thing. Suffice it to say, when the press learned that the leader of a murderous cult used to live with one of the Beach Boys, word got around, to put it mildly. Though in fairness, it's not like Dennis could have known what Charles was truly capable of. Dude, he stayed with me for a few days. I didn't know he was that Adolf. 2 months after 2020, the band sued Capitol again for unpaid royalties. That didn't work out, and by June, their contract expired. With it, Capitol stopped printing all of their records, cutting off yet another source of money. Plus, labels didn't want to sign the boys because of their lack of cultural cachet and Brian's reclusiveness. Culturally and financially, this was the lowest point yet for the Beach Boys. Thankfully, their fortune turned around a teeny bit soon enough. Van Dyke Parks, at this point an exec at Warner, connected them to Reprise Records. Reprise offered to take the boys in and revive their Brother Records imprint, but only if Brian participated in making records. Brian did not support the move to Reprise. He even painted his face green to throw the label guys off in a meeting. I can relate. Not to the meeting bit, but to the painting my face green bit. Despite Brian's objections, the band signed to Reprise in November 1969. Sessions for the band's next album ran for 18 months throughout 1969 and 1970 at several studios. Seemed like the band wanted to make a splash with their first Reprise album. In August 1970, the Beach Boys released Sunflower. This one particularly made me realize how far the boys had come from Pet Sounds and Smile. Where Brian once handled all writing and production, Sunflower shows the Beach Boys as an honest-to-God band. Maybe for the first time ever. Everyone gets a chance to shine here. Brian contributes with This Whole World. Brian and Mike team up on Cool Cool Water, that one being a reworking of a Smile-era song. Bruce Johnston pens the gorgeous Tears in the Morning and the tender Deirdre. You might know that second song for being sampled in 2 different video games, Earthbound and Undertale. But oh, if there's one Beach Boy who gets to shine the brightest, it's Dennis. He's credited on the sauntering opener Slip On Through, the barn burner It's About Time with the incredible explosion halfway through, and possibly the best pure love song the Beach Boys ever did, Forever. I'm serious, this rivals Brian's best love songs. It's like he combined the beautiful harmonies and chord changes you would expect from Brian, but he delivers them in such a earthy, unpretentious way. I also do need to mention a song written by Brian and Mike, All I Wanna Do, which is not to be confused with All I Want to Do from 2020. I had heard before listening that this song is basically the birthplace of dream pop. Hyperbolic, I thought. Guys, this is literally where dream pop was born. They should make a Yesterday type movie where someone removes this song from history and then we don't get Beach House and Tums for some reason. Man, I'm impressed. Sunflower proves the Beach Boys could not only still write great music, but do it as a collective band. Now, it would be great if anyone actually listened to them. Sunflower's reviews were quite good at the time, but it was a commercial dud in the US. The album barely made a dent on the charts, and only one song charted, Add Some Music to Your Day. Once again, though, the UK response was way better. The album got into the top 30. Brian took the album's flopping quite harshly. He hadn't been hurt like this since Pet Sounds. He continued to retreat into his home, self-medicating, and running a health food store called the Radiant Radish. Sure, bro, why not? It was there where Brian met the radio DJ, Jack Riley. Jack had Brian on air for his first ever full-length interview right before Sunflower dropped. Following the interview, Jack sent the band a 6-page memo, and off the strength of that memo, the Beach Boys hired Jack as their new manager. So what did that memo say? First off, no more matching band outfits. Throw them out. Second, Carl's the band leader now. And third, go back to a certain Smile track and release it. Jack's reinvention played out over the course of a year. Ad slogans like, "It's now safe to listen to the Beach Boys."
And it wasn't before?
A live performance at the Big Sur Folk Festival that had Rolling Stone apologizing for their treatment of the band after skipping the Monterey Festival. An appearance at a Grateful Dead show, at which Bob Dylan attended and said, "They're damned good." The boys might actually have been back in town, but we weren't gonna know until they dropped a new album. Recording for it ran from January to July 1971, and in August, the Beach Boys released Surf's Up. Yeah? Is it? Have you ever seen a more confrontational album cover in your life? And get this, the opening song from a band famously associated with the water is called Don't Go Near the Water. It's like if the Beatles put out a song called I Don't Wanna Hold Your Hand. At least in terms of presentation, this is the Beach Boys rejecting everything the public knew about them. And I am so here for it. Not only on a conceptual level, but also on a musical level. This is music, and really good music at that. Carl owns his newfound status as band leader right off the bat. He gets his first ever solo writing credits with Long Promised Road and Feel Flows, and he recorded them both almost entirely on his own. Disney Girls 1957 was written by Bruce Johnston after seeing young folk in the band's audience suffer from drug abuse. In it, he paints a picture of an idyllic, simple life, and it's probably his best song with the Beach Boys. On that same note, we even get some, dare I say, political material on here. Jack Riley encouraged the band to write more topical lyrics. Opener Don't Go Near the Water condemns environmental pollution, accompanied by one of the finest vocal harmony breakdowns in the band's history. And Mike Love's Student Demonstration Time reworks a Lieber and Stoller song to reflect the mood after the Kent State shootings. Brian gives us A Day in the Life of a Tree, another environmentally conscious song sung from the perspective of a dying tree. It's not sung by any Beach Boy, but by Jack Riley, in case it wasn't clear how crucial he had become to the band. And finally, we get the closer, the title track, and the song Jack Riley mandated the band to pull from Smile, Surf's Up. This recording comes straight from the Smile sessions, almost untouched aside from some minor overdubs. Like the album cover, this one is a total subversion of the band's previous image. A man experiences a divine intervention at a concert and decides to devote his life to God. The first half is as harmonically freeform as you would expect from Smile-era Brian, but the second half? Yeah, if God played me that, I'd be divinely inspired too. I'm gonna say something bold. I think this is my favorite Beach Boys album. Yeah, it may not be as outwardly impressive as Pet Sounds, but there is something so captivating about this band fully coming together to reject their past image and embrace a new future. I love this album. Oh, thank Christ, Surf's Up did all right. Good reviews, top 30 chart placement in the US, top 20 in the UK, solid FM radio support. Even if none of its songs became big hits, Surf's Up was still their best performing album in ages. This is what happens when a band is able to pursue their creative vision without a label pushing for an immediate follow-up. Anyway, Reprise then pushed them for an immediate follow-up. Initially, this was going to be a sequel of sorts to Surf's Up called Landlocked, but Reprise's insistence meant the boys had to shift focus. It was in part because of the label pressure that the Beach Boys were so close to splitting up at this point. Creative differences and Brian's general disinterest had the bandmates traveling to places in separate cars. This got so bad that Bruce Johnston left in April 1972. But don't fret, my tawdry little munchkin, he still appeared on their next album. In May 1972, we got Carl and the Passions, So Tough. All right, Mike, you are now over halfway through the Beach Boys catalog and over an hour into this retrospective. How you feeling?
I would like to cash in a lifeline.
All right, which one?
The I don't have much at all to say about this album lifeline. When I first listened to this album, my only note was, need to re-listen, I have no notes.
I will try my best though, cause I love you. In keeping with how fractured they'd become, the songs on So Tough were recorded with each member in their studio, just doing their own thing. You get some country on Here She Comes, some harder rock on You Need a Mess of Help to Stand Alone, some beautiful orchestration from my main man Dennis on Cuddle Up. There's a lot in So Tough. It's just not much of it is new. But hey, there's a nice callback hidden in the album title. The fictional band name called back to a pre-Beach Boys group Brian started as a teenager. Speaking of Brian, he was basically gone at this point too, as he worked with David Sandler on a collaborative album called Spring. At least he contributed on 3 songs, like the highlight Marcella. We did get some new meat though. Carl brought in South African group and Brother Records signee, The Flame, after working with them over the past few years. They pop up quite a bit on this album, and 2 of their members, Blondie Chaplin and Ricky Fattar, outright joined the band in 1972.
Something fun about this series is that I get to learn what albums have shooters. Like back when I talked about Talking Heads, I kind of brushed past the first live album, the one before Stop Making Sense, and I learned in the comments how much of a sin that was for some people. But hey, we're all our own people. We all gravitate towards different things. So Tough just didn't work for me. That's all.
So Tough was a return to the middling sales and reviews of Beach Boys' past. Reprise certainly tried, though. They even bundled the album with a free copy of Pet Sounds in the US, which had been out of print for a while. A nice gesture, but boy, what an unflattering comparison. Bro, your new cat is fine and all, but when he's sitting next to Garfield, I'm gonna get me some Wasaga, you know what I mean? Once again though, the album sold fine, or at least better, in the UK.
It's all enough to get you thinking. It's all enough to get you thinking thoughts. A certain kind of thought. The kind of thought that you would think when you're thinking, and you would think a particular thought, but then you actually think another thought.
This particular thought in question started brewing back in 1970. The Beach Boys were 4 hours late to a Rotterdam concert, but not only was the crowd still packed, but they were more excited by the band's new material. So Jack Riley posed a question to the band after So Tough. What if the Beach Boys, the California band,
moved out of California, and the boys were actually up for it. So after many years of commercial imbalance, the Beach Boys said to the US, "F you guys, we're going to Europe, the Netherlands specifically." It wasn't just the boys shipping out though. Due to a shortage of available recording studios, they also shipped over Brian's entire home studio. Thankfully, this process went horribly. It took 4.5 weeks of shipping stuff on every commercial LA to Amsterdam flight, plus hundreds of thousands in fees to get everything over. Not helping was Brian Wilson, once again reticent to do anything, and even Dennis Wilson, who quit halfway through sessions for this next album. But even with these rough conditions, the band still finished that new album by October. And when Reprise heard it, they said, "This is the worst thing I've ever heard." They didn't like it. Van Dyke Parks, still an exec at Reprise's parent label Warner, said there wasn't a hit. You know how bad you gotta mess up for Mr. Crow Cry's Uncover the Cornfield to be like, "Hey, you guys should try writing a hit"? Van Dyke went straight to his old writing partner's house with a tape recorder and made a clearly unwell Brian write a hit.
Hypnotize me and tell me that I ain't crazy. I'm insane.
Once this new song was done, the album was finally approved by Reprise. In January 1973, we got Holland. What do you see in this Rorschach test? Wrong, it's the band's trajectory for the past 3 albums. Aw yeah, now we're talking, we're so back, we're gonna make a beach-tillion dollars. Holland is very much a pendulum shift back to Sunflower and Surf's Up, at least in goodness. Sail On Sailor was the hit Brian gave Van Dyke, and while I feel bad saying it given the mental duress he was clearly under, this is one of my favorite songs by the band. I especially like Blondie Chaplin on lead vocals, kinda reminds me of Steely Dan. Mike writing both music and lyrics for the first time with the waltzy Big Sur, that song being part of an ambitious California-inspired suite. Ricky Fattar rocking the Moog on the soulful Leaving This Town, Carl's lush vocals on The Traitor, which vamps out with a lovely psychedelic second half, easily the second big highlight off the album. Holland is another great album for the Beach Boys. They still got it despite everything. Nothing will derail this trend of quality music. Breaking news at this hour. Shit. Holland saw decent sales and quite good reviews across the board, even if single performance was lacking. Worth noting though, by Holland's release, their live tours were widely considered must-see events, not only for the band's synergy on stage or the 60s hits, but for the newer material as well. The fanbase had grown beyond just teenagers to include college kids and die-hard rock fans. There was still a hunger for the Beach Boys. They just had to find a way to capitalize on it. 2 of the most important albums for the Beach Boys ever came out in this interim. And what's especially is that neither album was a mainline album. First was November 1973's live album, The Beach Boys in Concert. This is their best live album in my opinion, covering just about every song you'd want to hear except Vegetables. But I bring it up because it sold well, really damn well. It became their first album to go gold since 1966. Second, okay, this one needs context. Earlier, in August 1973, the film American Graffiti released. This film, which was very successful, had an equally successful soundtrack comprised of 50s and 60s rock hits, including many Beach Boys songs. Capitol, the boys' old label, saw the success and decided to get in on it, leading to June 1974's compilation album, Endless Summer. I bring it up because here comes the money! Endless Summer sold as if it was the early 60s again. Over 3 million copies sold in the US, peaking at #1 on the charts and staying on the charts for 156 weeks. Now, I don't know if you've ever gotten a sign from God before, but to me, these 2 albums and the success they saw was the equivalent of God coming down and saying to the Beach Boys, "You guys should just be an oldies band now." I mean, given how the past few albums performed, maybe that was the way? I said before they had sold all right, but they were still not on the level of Surfin USA or All Summer Long. Not helping was that, despite Carl and Dennis routinely proving themselves as producers and songwriters, Reprise was not convinced Beach Boys music could sell without Brian's name attached. And not helping, the thing that was not helping, was Brian being in a rough spot. Following Murray Wilson's passing in late 1973, he spent his days abusing drugs, overeating, and secluding himself. It got to a point where his wife brought in 24-hour psychiatrist Eugene Landy to help Brian. Thankfully, after some time with Eugene, Brian was in a good enough place to not only make some music, but to produce an album solo for the first time since Pet Sounds. Recording for the boys' next album went from January to May 1976, with them now back on the West Coast. These were not fun sessions. The band was split between Carl and Dennis wanting new material, and Mike and Al wanting to make a quick buck and focus on old covers. This is where the don't f with the formula energy really started coming through with Mike. Beach Boy, though, you wouldn't know the BTS energy was rough based on how this album was being marketed. The boys' new manager, Stephen Love, got them placed in all the big magazines and got Brian out doing loads of interviews. The rollout was based around one slogan: Brian's back.
I was confined to my bedroom. I was taking drugs. I was snorting cocaine, which I don't agree with. I mean, I don't...
Brian was very much not back. He just acted super off-putting most of the time and said weird things. In July 1976, we got 15 Big Ones. Or as I like to call it, Me After Taco Bell. Now, for real, it got the name from the 15 songs on it and for it marking 15 years of the Beach Boys. So how were the boys celebrating their quinceañera? In a reflection of the tense recording sessions, the track list for 15 Big Ones is half covers and half originals. This approach does give us some alright songs, like the covers of Chuck Berry's Rock and Roll Music and the Righteous Brothers' Just Once in My Life. Susie Cincinnati is a very catchy tune by Al Jardine, and Hatophonia is a really touching song from Brian, his sister-in-law, and Mike about talking over the phone to someone you love. On the other hand, though, TM is another song about TM, and it's corny as hell. I thought I told you not to let Mike write about TM again. Wait, Brian wrote that one? Across the board, I don't know, man. After the albums we had gotten in the early 70s, 15 Big Ones feels rushed and basic. Not to mention, the singing sounds kinda rough. The gang were mostly in their early to mid 30s at this point, and they sound like men in their early to mid 30s. Which isn't a bad thing on its own. Voices change with age. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. The issue is when these grown men are still out here trying to sing like they're teenagers. It's not the worst thing ever, but 15 Big Ones is a regression for the Beach Boys, a shoddy attempt to recapture a bygone era. Which means it was their best performing album in over a decade. The album went gold, rock and roll music was a top 10 US hit, and the associated tour was a major success. For the first time since 1964, Brian Wilson came back out on the road. He was kinda weird about it and didn't seem like he wanted to be there, but hey, he fit the legal definition of back, and that's all that they needed. From July 1976 onward, the bandmates all pursued their own interests. Al spent time with family, Mike taught TM, Carl produced a Richie Martin album, not to be confused with Ricky Martin, Dennis worked on his first solo album. Brian also got to work on some new music of his own. His work ethic was pretty consistent and healthy this time around. Some of that might have been attributable to that 24-hour psychologist, Eugene Landy, though he was dismissed at the end of 1976 due to disagreements over fees. While this new music was planned for a solo album, Brian decided to bring the Beach Boys in order to check off one more album on their Reprise contract. In April 1977, we found out the Beach Boys Love You. Now, I just told a really funny joke, and it was that the Beach Boys love you. No. Or I mean, they might. I don't know their relationship to you. What I mean is, this is the second or third time that a Brian Wilson solo album masqueraded as a Beach Boys album. He produced the whole thing, wrote nearly everything on it, and played most of the instruments. So what, are we in for Smile being reborn like the noble phoenix? Not necessarily, at least in terms of sheer sonic wonderment. The Beach Boys' Love You is a quirky, quaint exploration of synthesizers. Moogs abound on this album. Brian was very much inspired by synth legend Wendy Carlos and her album Switched on Bach. And lyrically, the subject matter is very simple. Not just the lyrics themselves, but what the boys sing about. Roller skating, airplanes, good times. If 15 Big Ones is the band returning to the early surf days, Love You is the band returning to Pet Sounds, or at least the conceptual ethos behind it. Both albums try to recapture why the boys were so beloved, but in totally different ways. It even hits you with the same Pet Sounds trick. The opener, Let Us Go On This Way, is cheery with its horns and group vocals and big snare. It makes you think this will be a conventional album before throwing you in a dark room with ding dang. Imagine not caring for this album. Imagine being a stupid idiot. Imagine being a little bitch. Side note, I'm thinking of changing my channel bio. Let me know what you think. I'm sorry, gang. I don't hate it, I just don't get the hype. I like pieces of it. I like the consistent presence of horns throughout. I like the idea of them experimenting more with synths. But throughout the album, I feel like it's just missing things. The mixes can be so sparse, which makes the drumming feel so lackluster, which makes the Moogs clash so hard with the rest of the instrumentation, which makes the boys' voices come off so gravelly. Maybe that dissonance is what makes folks love it, but I felt so at odds with it. Also, while I like the throwback to simpler subjects, some of them just fall flat for me. Johnny Carson, for example, an ode to the famed late-night host. I'm sorry, y'all, right from the jump, this is corny to me. Like, imagine if Geese wrote a song called Jimmy Fallon, and it was just a straightforward song about Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon, he's super cool, he can have a big old pie. They would literally get killed. When it commits fully to one approach, that's when I like it best. The Night Was So Young is a thoughtful ballad with Carl singing lead vocal. No synths, minimal drums, but they work. I also liked Let's Put Our Hearts Together, with Brian duetting with his then wife, Marilyn. I joked about it earlier, but there will definitely be shooters for this album in the comments. And if that's you, you should join my Patreon, and then sign up for Nebula, and then tell me how wrong I am, and then sign up for Nebula, and then join my Patreon. Turns out no one cared that the Beach Boys loved them. In some ways, its reception mirrored Pet Sounds. Lackluster sales, solid reviews from critics, beloved by those who clicked with it, and pure confusion from everyone else. Over the years, though, it would see a significant reappraisal, and Brian said it was his favorite Beach Boys album.
Favorite Beach Boys album?
The Beach Boys Love You.
That said, and I feel like I'm repeating myself here, Brian was hit hard by its failure. He and Mike blamed Warner and Reprise for not pushing it more. The labels weren't confident in it before release, and they had gotten word that the band's manager at the time had signed a new deal with CBS, even though they still owed one more album to Reprise. Okay, yeah, in fairness, I'd be pissed about that too. Love You even got outsold by Dennis Wilson's solo album later in August 1977, Pacific Ocean Blue. Though this might be because Pacific Ocean Blue is really fucking good. Like, oh my God, guys, trust me, I'm not gonna spend much time getting into it here, but imagine Sunflower or Surf's Up, but with as much orchestration and way more horns, and you've already left the video to go check it out, and honestly, that's fair. Now, Brian wanted to get out a follow-up to Love You right away. In fact, he recorded most of it before Love You came out. This album would have been called Adult Child. I say would've because it never got officially released. Mike and Al heard it, and likely due to Love You flopping, and maybe war flashbacks from the last time Brian followed up a de facto solo album with more of the same, they vetoed its release. If you're interested, various bootlegs are available online. The only bright spot at this time was the band's continued success as a touring act, earning up to $150K per show. God had the chance to do the funniest thing here, and he did it. After the band fired their previous manager because of the CBS fiasco, they brought in a new one. This guy planned for the band to go out on a European tour starting in June. However, he didn't fill out the right paperwork. Oh well, that's just a minor setback, right? Yo, is that an angry mob? The whole tour got canceled. In response, all the promoters sued the hell out of the Beach Boys. The gang lost $200K in expenses. This new manager got the boot immediately, and the boys brought back in the CBS fiasco guy. Sure, why not? That looks harmless now. But that's not all. After a show in Central Park, tensions within the band reached a boiling point. Actual sides were formed. Carl and Dennis, colloquially known as the Freelivers, versus Mike and Al, the Meditators, with Brian staying neutral. 2 days later, a fight broke out on the airport tarmac during a layover. The fight was so bad that Dennis told the press he had quit the band, even if Mike said otherwise. And 2 weeks after that, the band got together and made a change that would send ripples through the rest of their history. Brian gave up his vote on band matters to Mike, meaning Mike and Al effectively had full control of the Beach Boys. If the early 70s was the Carl and Dennis era, and the mid-70s was the all-together band era, the late 70s kicked off the Mike Love and Al Jardine era. So, how about one more album for Reprise? Well, in order to improve group morale and keep the bandmates away from their drug dealers, Mike and Al decided to ship the band out to Fairfield, Iowa, the home of the Maharishi International University. Yeah, Mike had continued to work with the Maharishi this whole time, and through this relocation strategy, the band's morale got so much worse. Oh my god, they all hated each other. Carl and Dennis did the bare minimum. Brian was severely depressed. He later said he straight up did not remember making this next album. He didn't even remember they were trying to make 2 albums. Yeah, the sessions in Iowa were planned to give the band both their last album with Reprise and their first with CBS, but Reprise rejected it because they didn't think Brian was actually on it. Hey, I don't blame them. Instead, the Christmas material was reworked and folded into the other album. In September 1978, the boys released their last album with Reprise, MIU Album. This time, we've got some easy listening produced by Al Jardine plus the band's touring keyboardist, Ron Altbach. Brian was executive producer, mostly just to have his name listed somewhere. It's time for America's new favorite sitcom, The Man Who Has Nothing to Say About MIU Album. I mean, hey, it is easy listening. Real easy. It's standing on the corner showing its stuff, which is sad because it has no stuff to show. I would apologize to the MIU shooters out there, but I'm gonna call their bluff. I don't think there are shooters for this album because I don't know how it could inspire strong enough emotions to have shooters in the first place. Okay, fine, I'll name some songs. Match Point of Our Love was a highlight. It's got a nice chill groove to it. My Diane is about Brian's affair with his sister-in-law, and Dennis sells the hell out of his one lead vocal on this album. Pitter Patter is simply about rain, but it's welcoming in a way that other simple Beach Boys songs can be. Yeah, that's it. MIU, more like PU, this thing flopped. At a time when disco and punk were all the rage, the Beach Boys only reconfirmed to everyone how much of an oldies act they had become. The resulting tour was a success, at least, but not without issue. At one point, Dennis bought heroin for Brian with money that Carl gave him, leading to an argument where Brian's bodyguard socked Carl in the face. The band's manager, who remember got fired previously for the CBS deal, was fired again for siding with the bodyguard. At least their Reprise deal was over and done with, but it's not like the new CBS deal gave them many new perks anyway. There were still stipulations that Brian had to write and produce a certain amount of songs per album. Stipulations he hated. The aftermath of the MIU tour was very rough on Brian. When they got back to LA, Brian disappeared for days on a drug binge, only to be found in a San Diego park without shoes or his wallet. Once he recovered in a hospital, he joined the band in Miami to record a new album. I wish I could say these sessions went better than MIU's, but sadly they were just as tense and unfun. CBS also wasn't happy. Then President Walter Yetnikoff reportedly said to the band, "Gentlemen, I think I've been f***ed." Sessions continued across many other studios in the US, all of them being equally unfun. Brian would not be appearing much on this next album. He was institutionalized in the fall of 1978 through early 1979. However, making a return was Bruce Johnston. He had continued making music after leaving earlier in the decade. He had even helped write Barry Manilow's I Write the Songs, and he would be credited as producer on this new album. In March 1979, we got LA, or Light Album. Well, if nothing else, I at least have things to say about LA. You might be wondering how the Beach Boys would have been able to convene and make songs together amid all their turmoil. The answer is, they didn't. LA was described by Mike Love as a collection of solo songs. Some from Mike Love's unreleased first album, some from Dennis's second album he had been working on, and some that had been sitting in the vault from past sessions. Also, if I can make a quick aside, I would highly recommend the first track off of Mike Love's First Love. It never got officially released anywhere, as far as I know, but you can find it pretty easily. And sonically, the whole thing is a small shift from MIU's easy listening and more towards soft rock. So I mean, it's a tiptoe of a shift, but it's still something. It's also a nice chance to see Bruce Johnston in a lead production role. I'd like to think he's responsible for giving the album a little more life compared to MIU. Good Timing opens the album with a classic style waltz written by Brian and Carl. Lady Linda is Al singing about his wife with a melody borrowed from Bach. Baby Blue definitely has that big Dennis energy in it with its dramatic chord changes and serene vocal harmonies. Love Surrounds Me has Christine McVie from Fleetwood Mac on backing vocals. That's cool.
But there are two songs on here that deserve the specialist of mentions.
The first one is Here Comes the Night. That might sound familiar to you. It's a song from Wild Honey, the one with the wild-ass chord changes, and the band remade it. Let's see how it compares. Your ears do not deceive you. They took Here Comes the Night and turned it into an 11-minute disco extravaganza. It's the longest song in the band's entire catalog. And the other one, Shortenin' Bread. Shortenin' Bread, huh? What's the deal there? Well, this song is originally a 1900 folk song. Brian was a fan of it. Brian was a very big fan of it. Brian Wilson was obsessed with this f***ing song.
He recorded over a dozen versions of it at various points. Alex Chilton from Big Star would get calls from Brian in the middle of the night asking if he would sing on this song. Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees once did LSD with Brian and John Lennon, and Brian played this song on the piano over and over and over again. I don't know why, but Brian loved Shortenin' Bread.
I gotta say, I like some parts of LA. I don't think it's a trash fire. If anything, it just makes me think of how it could have been better had the Beach Boys not been in such a rough state. LA was received poorly like MIU before it. Weak sales, rough reviews, a modest US hit with Good Timing, but that was it. CBS wanted the boys to record a quick follow-up to recoup losses from LA. In an attempt to get Brian feeling more comfortable in the studio, the band started their sessions for this next album in the same studio where they cut the early 60s hits. This approach did work for a bit, but after some time, Brian was right back in the dumps. Dennis got so frustrated with the state of things that he left sessions partway through. By October, the band gave production reins over to Bruce Johnston, who relocated the band to various other studios. Recording wrapped in February 1980, and the album followed just a month later. Keepin' the Summer Alive. Has it even been alive for a while now? I suppose we can consider this one as the third part of a trilogy of late 70s albums. It follows along the same soft rock lines as MIU and LA. Makes sense, since Bruce Johnston stayed on and is credited this time as the only producer. The big differentiator here is the gloss. Keepin' the Summer Alive sure sounds expensive. I did like the opening title track with guest guitar work provided by Joe Walsh from the Eagles. Going On is a solid lead single, and the only song from this whole album cycle that Brian liked. Santa Ana Winds employs some nice harmonica and strings, and the closer Endless Harmony had been written by Bruce all the way back in 1972. I remember 1972, that's when So Tough came out. I'd give anything to have a So Tough type album right about now. By the way, I wasn't joking about Dennis leaving the sessions either. On the final album, his only contribution is bass drum on one song. They couldn't even get him to play the whole drum kit. I just feel bad talking about their albums like this. Can't we do something about this? Can't we call an adult? We need some kind of change here. The Beach Boys proved that the summer was dead. KTSA bombed hard, only one song charted at all. Amid the rise of post-punk and the fall of disco, these boys were just not hip at all. Once again though, the tour did well. A stop at Nebworth in June 1980 was famous for giving us the only filmed concert recording with all 6 of the main Beach Boys. For the next few years, the boys would essentially accept their fate as live act only. We wouldn't get a new album for over 5 years. In the interim, Mike and Carl both pursued solo projects. Brian continued to succumb to mental illness and drugs, which led to his previous psychiatrist, Eugene Landy, coming back to oversee him. His regimen was strict, but it did work. Brian went from weighing 300 pounds to 185.
I wish I could say it was all good news, or at least okay news, but sadly this interim was famous because of one member.
We are still waiting for the results of an autopsy performed today on the body of Dennis Wilson. He was the drummer of the Beach Boys.
In December 1983, Dennis Wilson drowned while diving off a friend's boat. The world lost not only a Beach Boy, but a damn good songwriter who deserves to be known on his own. I suppose there's one highlight from this time. The band played a massive 4th of July show in DC that was well received by audiences. This concert gave the boys just the boost they needed to get back in the studio with some new faces. For the first time, a Beach Boys album would not be produced by any of the Beach Boys. Instead, production duties went to Steve Levine, most famous for producing Culture Club, aka Karma Chameleon. Normally, this kind of decision would cause me to suck myself into my own body, but honestly, good. It might be sacrilegious to say that, but come on, man, look at what we were getting at this point. Recording ran from June 1984 to March 1985. These sessions were not painless, but is that a surprise at this point? Though for some reason, one of the credited writers on all of Brian's songs was Eugene Landy. That's a little weird, but okay. In June 1985, the Beach Boys released The Beach Boys. This shouldn't be a surprise considering the man they got to produce it, but this self-titled album is the boys' full-on cannonball into the pool of 80s music. It has all the 80s slickness that you know and love /hate /feel an emotion about. In fact, it made history as one of the first digitally recorded albums ever. And maybe it's my fondness for 80s production when done well, or it's the Stockholm Syndrome getting to me, but I don't hate this sound on the Beach Boys. Listen, man, the Beach Boys could already be cheesy. To hear them do oldies cheese with the glistening sheen of a Fairlight CMI, it just feels like they're owning it more. Now, that doesn't mean the whole album is thus some classic, but there were some songs that I liked. It's Getting Late is a synth-heavy slow jam. Maybe I Don't Know kinda reminds me of Toto's Hold the Line. Passing Friend rocks some nice sax. I'd be very down if the boys brought in more 80s sax. However, and I'm sorry to start so long after this album came out, but I Do Love You is such a Stevie Wonder ripoff, with its low chromatic notes on the harmonica and the way someone sings Baby just like Stevie would. The song completely steals from Stevie. Let's look up who wrote this song. Are you serious? The writer stole their name from Stevie too. We need to report this to the Stevlin police right away. The self-titled album wasn't some runaway success, but it was a nice little uptick compared to the rest of the band's continued descent. Solid chart placements in multiple countries, and a US top 40 hit with Get You Back. Plus, they continued to draw in big crowds as a live act. They managed to score one kinda success with CBS before their contract expired and CBS chose to let it lapse. For the next few years, the boys went back to the oldies touring circuit. However, with the help of a new agent, they did seek out getting their songs in movies, or even making new songs for movies. There was 1987's Wipeout with rap verses from the Fat Boys, which was used in the film Disorderlies. If you somehow needed proof to know rappers on Beach Boys songs wouldn't work, here you go. This sucks ass, but it was a top 20 hit in the US, so what do I even know anymore? And then, in 1988, the most peculiar thing happened. You see, there was this Tom Cruise movie called Cocktail. Came out in July 1988. It's not very remarkable for any reason. Well, except for one reason. The film's director commissioned the Beach Boys for a song. Mike Love found an old demo from two outside writers, came up with a new chorus, and changed the tense from past to present. The band then recorded this song without Brian. Brian was largely out of the band's day-to-day operations as he was being treated by Eugene Landy. In fact, Landy demanded he be listed as a co-writer if Brian was gonna be on this new song, which the band denied. Again, kinda weird. In July 1988, Brian would hear this new song while driving in his car, and he was rather surprised to learn that it was by the Beach Boys. The song was called Kokomo. Isn't it wild that almost 40 years into their existence, a band can have their moves like Jagger moment? Anything is possible. I mean, it's not like the past few albums weren't a lead up with the boys adopting more modern production, but Kokomo is the most brazenly 80s thing the Beach Boys have done up to now. It's schlocky, immediately dated, and the clearest sign that we were now fully in the Mike Love era of the band. And lyrically, it plays into the same tropes as early Beach Boys songs: escapism, serenity, long nights with hot girls, except this time it's about a fictional place among the Caribbean islands. If the boys had established the California myth back in the 60s, Kokomo is like Mike Love turning that myth into a theme park experience. And you know what's even wilder? The song is not bad. I know this particular song inspires white-hot rage among some folks, but I can't bring myself to hate it. Maybe if this had come out right after, like, Holland, then I'd feel the whiplash way more, but I've been down in the muck for a few albums now. These people cannot hurt me anymore. Also, the sax solo is pretty good. Kokomo became, no joke, the Beach Boys' biggest song in multiple decades, hitting the top 10 in multiple countries and even getting to #1 in the US. The first time a Beach Boys song peaked that high since Good Vibrations. Mike Love must have been feeling real excited. 1988 was the band's best year in a while. They even got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I know Mick Jagger won't be here tonight. He's gonna have to stay in England. But I'd like to see us in the Coliseum and him Wembley Stadium because he's always been chicken shit to get on stage with the Beach Boys.
You know that one LeBron meme when he's like, anyone else on this team but not you? That's how I feel right about now. Off the strength of Kokomo, the Beach Boys re-signed with their first label, Capitol, and they started work on a new album. While the initial idea was songs from movies, Mike said the album got mired in politics and some pesky originals made the cut as well. In August 1989, the Beach Boys gave us Still Cruisin'. Already you know this album is good because it's not on any streaming services. The opening title track was apparently written for Lethal Weapon 2. I did not like the creepy flange on Mike Love as it starts, but I didn't hate the guitars as the song kept going. Somewhere Near Japan is a genuinely nice song, with shimmering guitars and solid harmonies. Kokomo is on here, of course. Wipeout with the Fat Boys is on here too. Lock Your Doors Tonight, Tell Your Family You Love Them. Don't worry though, if the thought of rappers on Beach Boys songs repulses you, just wait until you hear Mike whisper rapping on Make It Big. Disgusting. I hope we never hear rapping again on a... Wait, why are these songs here? Please, God, don't tell me the boys updated these songs. Please tell me they didn't put rapping on Wouldn't It Be Nice?
Well, East Coast girls are hip.
Oh, okay, phew. It's just 3 older songs. That's fine. Though Wouldn't It Be Nice has lots more compression on Brian's vocal, and I don't know why. This isn't some incredible rebound or anything, but I don't hate some of the newer material, and the old tunes are always nice to hear. Just please never put rappers on Beach Boys songs again, please, God. Still Cruisin' got slammed immediately by critics, but God did it sell well. It became the band's best-selling album since 15 Big Ones, and with their live shows continuing to sell well, the Beach Boys really were in their renaissance. Work soon began on a follow-up, one that would be produced by Mike Love and Terry Melcher, who had worked on Kokomo. Fun fact, Terry was also the one who connected Brian Wilson with Van Dyke Parks, which means this man is partially responsible for both Smile and Kokomo. Apparently, the inspiration was Mike Love walking along the beaches on Martha's Vineyard, seeing all the fun, and thinking, man, This is really summer in paradise. I guess that story wouldn't make sense any other time.
Man, this really is Carl and the Passion, so tough.
Contributions from other Beach Boys were scant. Al was suspended during recording due to not liking the album's direction. Carl provided some vocals, Bruce provided one song, and Brian wasn't on it at all, though his reasons were far more serious.
I've mentioned a few times now Eugene Landy, the psychiatrist that Brian was seeing since 1982. What I have not mentioned is the fact that Eugene was a piece of shit.
Who exploited Brian, gave him drugs to control him, wrangled his way into getting songwriting credit on his songs, and sucked him financially dry for most of his second tenure.
Like with Murray Wilson, I'm not going to be getting into the specifics because, again, we would all get very depressed if I did, but trust me, he sucked.
Also, if you would like to learn more about this period through the form of a music biopic, I'd recommend the film Love and Mercy. In May 1991, Brian was released from Eugene's care and placed under his own family's conservatorship. Only other thing to note, in 1992, Mike Love sued Brian over uncredited songwriting contributions. Mike would end up winning the case in late 1994, which led to 35 Beach Boys songs being credited to both Brian and Mike. In August 1992, we got Summer in Paradise. So this is a first, a Beach Boys album sonically led by Mike Love. If nothing else, this is a worthwhile— Nah, this shit is so fucking ass, I'm sorry, y'all. Summer in Paradise is, pound for pound, the worst Beach Boys album. If Brian Wilson's pseudo-solo album was lavish and melancholic, Mike Love's pseudo-solo album is hokey, cheap, and the worst kind of nostalgia play. Let's see how it starts. Hot fun in the summertime. No, no, no. Absolutely not. You do not start your album with that ass snare drum. When you start your album with a snare drum, you better make sure it sounds great. Taylor Swift's Fearless. Great snare. The Wallflowers bringing down the horse. That's the greatest snare drum of all time. This, gross, repulsive, bad. Surfin is a remake of the boys' very first song. This new version sounds like garbage. Summer of Love was made for the show Baywatch. It's got more of Mike Love whisper rapping. It's a lot of fun. No, it's not. It's cringe and bad.
Well, it's a love thing.
My dumb ass is realizing that's a double entendre because it's love as a word, but also Mike's last name is Love. I think he's been making that play on words for his entire goddamn career. The title track is a bit of political material.
Mike Love holds a lot of political beliefs that, to put it kindly, I would not agree with, but the one that I would agree with him on is protecting the environment.
This song tries to bring attention to protecting the environment by calling back to all the old Beach Boys songs.
Way back when, well, our master plan was having fun, fun, fun as America's band.
Not a bad message by any means, but it's delivered in the corniest way possible. And somehow, this isn't even the worst time Mike Love has called back to old Beach Boys lyrics.
Good vibration, assassination.
In an effort to bring my cortisol down, I will acknowledge a trio of songs in the middle that I didn't hate, largely because of the guitar tones and the power that Beach Boys' vocal harmonies still have on me. I'd say they're worth checking out on your preferred streaming service, but like Still Cruisin', this album isn't officially anywhere. What a shame. The album closes with another remake. Dennis Wilson's Forever, the song I praised super hard earlier.
Now, this cover of Forever features a guest vocalist. And if you don't know who it is, I would like you to make a guess now. I'll give you 3 hints. They were not an official member of the Beach Boys. I haven't mentioned them up to this point, and they were a famous actor around this time. Ready?
Yep, that is John Stamos of Full House fame. He had become buddies with Mike Love and would continue to pop up with the band in media and at live shows. I can't say he ruins Forever because Forever is an incredible song, but boy do he and the band overdo it. What else can I say about Summer in Paradise? It ate a lot of toxic sewage and is now a deformed monster. It slayed dozens of innocent people and is now in jail. It served life in prison for the aforementioned killings.
I have never been so happy to see an album burn. Summer in Paradise did not chart in the US. It did not chart in the UK. According to Personnel, it sold just 1,000 copies. That is disastrous. That is Robin Thicke Paula core. That is that new Lizzo album core. It flopped so hard that the independent distributor the boys released this album through immediately folded. The band went back to the county fair circuit until they met country producer Joe Thomas. He gave the boys an idea, an album of their past songs covered by country singers of the time. The band agreed and even managed to bring Brian back. He had previously been working with Andy Paley on an album, but he got roped in like cattle. Yeehaw. In August 1996, we got Stars and Stripes Volume 1. Ooh, aren't we presumptuous? I don't know why you would listen to this. And I don't mean that in a bad way or a negative way. I'm just like, who was this made for? I hate using AI generated as a complaint because I think most people use it these days to complain about music they don't like, but this album feels like someone went into Suno and said, give me 12 Beach Boys songs, but in the style of 90s country. The only song I had any remote feelings about was the opener, Don't Worry Baby, with Lori Morgan. I'm a sucker for songs with verses in B-flat major and choruses in F major, and that's definitely the Shania Twain fan in me. Who asked for this? Does anyone want this? Cause it's here. It's right here for you. Enjoy it, because I just don't get it. I mean, Stars and Stripes did at least chart this time. Reviews were still terrible though, and it was seen as a giant cash grab. It even screwed over Brian Wilson. The album's failure meant the music he was making with Andy Paley got shelved. It also is not officially on streaming services. And in case it's not obvious, there was no Volume 2.
During these years, from the late 80s and the 90s, I think it was kind of smooth sailing, you know?
John Stamos, shut the f up. In fact, we would be waiting 16 years before we got another Beach Boys album. That's the longest stretch without a new album by a lot. So what did everyone get up to during the break? I'll talk about Carl first because, unfortunately, he has the least amount to talk about. In February 1998, Carl passed away at 51 due to lung cancer. Another truly excellent musician and songwriter taken from us too soon. Mike Love and Al Jardine spent the 2000s either touring separately or throwing lawsuits at each other. Through one of the lawsuits, Mike Love effectively won control of the Beach Boys' name. Bruce basically just stayed with Mike on the road. Brian definitely had the most active interim. He released several albums, including ones with his daughters and with Joe Thomas from Stars and Stripes. He started touring extensively again, even playing Pet Sounds and Smile-era songs for the first times in decades. He also released a very big project that I will be talking about later. It was in 2011 when Joe Thomas reunited with Brian, and the idea of a new Beach Boys album started percolating. Over the course of 2011, the whole gang came back together to work on new music. They even went and got David Marks back. Their reunion was made public with an announcement in December 2011 and a performance at the 2012 Grammys. And in June 2012, we got the latest, and if we're being real here, last Beach Boys album. That's Why God Made the Radio. I had no expectations for this. The fact that the band got to return after all these years for a new album is remarkable on its own. But you know, even without that context, this one's pretty good. It's like the boys wanted to recapture the mid to late 60s, and the result comes off as surprisingly effortless. You've got your upbeat hits like the title track and Spring Vacation, your more tender, slower cuts like Shelter, even some returns to Smile-era production like the lyricless opener Think About the Days. On that note, the main songs everyone points to on this album comprise a 4-track suite at the album's end. Not only are they gorgeous, but they show the overall band in a more melancholic place, looking back on their life and the relationships along the way. I especially love the closing song, Summer's Gone. Brian had conceived it as a literal endpoint, written years earlier after the death of his mother Audrey in 1997. This was meant to be the title track and the final song the Beach Boys ever made. But Brian changed his mind during sessions and decided he wanted to make a follow-up. He would later retool that follow-up idea for his own solo album, but still, this closer is gorgeous. Like the whole album, it's a warm, bittersweet end to the Beach Boys' recording career.
Say the line, Bart!
I am very much a ladies' man. I admit to that. Yes, life in prison as ladies' man.
The Beach Boys' final album got good reviews and sold well. Along with the associated run of reunion shows, it was an all-around success. Following those shows, each boy resumed doing their own thing. Brian released a new solo album in 2015 and spent the years after the reunion touring a bunch. Unfortunately, he passed away just last year. He's often considered one of America's great composers, and I don't mean just in pop music. He gets put up there with Gershwin and John Williams and Sondheim, deservedly so. Al Jardine alternated between releasing music and playing shows. He's currently on the road with Brian's old touring band. From what I've heard, those shows are solid. Mike and Bruce also spent the years touring all over as the official Beach Boys, though Bruce actually just retired from the road earlier this year, leaving just Mike as the only remaining Beach Boy in the group. And, listen, this video is going out at the end of July 2026. If anything happens after that, I wouldn't know. Okay? Now, normally this is where I would wrap things up and I would suggest albums for you to check out. But this time, we have a chance to end things a little bit differently. Because even though I've covered all 29 of the mainline Beach Boys albums, there's one album I haven't talked about yet. And it might be the key to fully understanding the Beach Boys. For an album that has never been officially released, Smile sure has been released a lot of times, not only from all of the songs that got repurposed for other Beach Boys albums, but from its two current full-length versions. In 2004, following a well-received concert of Smile's potential songs, Brian assembled a team to record a reimagining of Smile. And later in 2011, Capitol's engineers went back through the old tapes and put together a compilation of sorts, multiple discs of demos, plus a polished version of what the main album could have been based on the track list of Brian's 2004 version. So let's answer this first. Is Smile good? Yes. Yes, it is. In fact, if you're a fan of Pet Sounds and have not heard it, you absolutely should. It carries on the forward-thinking production and brilliant engineering of Pet Sounds and Good Vibrations, but explodes the scale beyond anything of its time. Many of the album's songs I've already praised. Our Prayer, Heroes and Villains, Surf's Up, Cabinescence, Vegetables with much better production than the Smiley Smile version, Good Vibrations, but the rest of the songs are just as ambitious and outside the box. Barnyard with its mimicked farm animals, In Blue Hawaii with its mix of Hawaiian instrumentation and big horns and strings. It's also clear that Brian was envisioning Smile as a full experience. The way the Heroes and Villains chorus comes back on Roll Plymouth Rock, or how the overlapping vocals on Child is the Father of the Man reappear on the ending section of Surf's Up. Now, between these two, I prefer the 2011 reissue for the original recordings and how they place me in the initial context of the album's making. The 2004 version is great, and it's incredible that Brian got to make Smile after many years, but it has a cleanness that I don't always love. Also, on Surf's Up, they do a firm ending, and I definitely prefer the fade out. But what am I even saying at this point? This is the most two cakes thing ever. Regardless of which one you prefer, you're still getting a gorgeous, spellbinding album from one of music's greatest minds. But I really wanted to highlight Smile because it raises a question that I've been thinking about throughout this whole project. If Smile had actually come out, would the Beach Boys' story have changed at all? And the answer I've come to is no. That's not to say Smile is bad. I just said I really like it.
But back in 1967, seeing the reception to Pet Sounds and Heroes and Villains, I don't think the public would have been as receptive to it as they might be nowadays. And I know Good Vibrations was a huge hit made in the same style, but Good Vibrations has a hit song quality to it. It's about good times. Much of Smile isn't about good times, at least directly. It takes time to sit with and appreciate, which makes it a good album, but how many people would have appreciated it when the preconception about the Beach Boys was surfing and cars and girls and just straightforward happiness? I think, no matter what, they were bound to lose with Smile.
In fact, here's a really bold question. Are the Beach Boys a bunch of losers? And I do not mean that as an insult. I mean it as rationally and literally as I can, because most of their career was them losing.
When they made Pet Sounds, they lost the general public and their label support. They spent the rest of the 60s making albums that would go on to be influential, but no one cared at the time. When Carl and Dennis stepped up their game in the 70s, it didn't matter because people thought Beach Boys songs had to have Brian's name attached to matter. And when Mike Love got to pivot the band back to what it seemed like everyone wanted from them, they lost their artistic credibility to the diehard community. And they also kind of lost the public. Each member of the band dealt with personal issues, or drugs, or murderers, or all of the above, and at the center of it all was a genius songwriter dealing with terrible demons, whose condition was untreated for decades and who was exploited and abused by many around him. All the while, other bands, some of whom made work that was inspired by the Beach Boys, got to take all the credit and money and awards. Was the Beach Boys' ultimate purpose just to lose? To play that part as other artists and bands got to win?
And I suppose the uplifting spin that we can put on it is at least we got a bunch of great music out of it, but I'm sorry, the boys' story was full of sadness and failure and suffering. And the only times it seemed to be going well was when they played into the persona everyone knew them for back when they were children.
What does that say about the Beach Boys? What does that say about us as an audience? We cherish artists as long as they only fit one specific prescribed definition. You have to pray that your good work simply finds an audience, even if it doesn't happen for years or even decades after you made it, after you've suffered financial and personal ruin. And even then, look at how some people talk about your work. Music for when you've been killing yourself for years? What the f*** are we doing here? I'm sorry. I'm not gonna end this with a message of hope. I think it would be disingenuous. I think the story of the Beach Boys is ultimately a tragic one. And I think it reveals a lot of ugliness about the artistic process and our own expectations as an audience. How the hell do I even end this? Does anyone want to play us out with Shortenin' Bread?
If you want to get into the Beach Boys, I would suggest the Endless Summer compilation to get a taste of why the band blew up early on. And then after that, check out Pet Sounds. It's the definitive classic album, you know. After that, these were my favorite albums. They're all good, and I would recommend them to you. And if you enjoy learning about artists and their albums and their stories, check out this video next.